I didn't feel the sting of the slap at first. I only felt the shock of impact and the cold, hard tiles of the waiting room floor pressing against my cheek. Then came the taste. Warm, copper blood filled my mouth. My name is Olivia Underwood. I am 32 years old. I was at my gynecologist's office, a place that was supposed to be safe. But my stepbrother, Will, had turned it into a crime scene. He stood over me, his chest heaving, his face twisted into something ugly and red. He pointed a shaking finger right at my face. "You better start listening to me," he screamed. His voice echoed off the clean white walls. "You sign those papers now." The room had gone dead silent. The other patients, women waiting for checkups, some holding their pregnant bellies, stared at us in pure horror. A nurse behind the front desk was already shouting into a phone, her hands trembling as she called 911. Will didn't care about them. He didn't care that I was hurt. He only cared about the fraudulent inheritance papers he had thrown at me. He wanted to steal everything my father had left me, and he had just assaulted me in public to get it. I spat blood onto the floor. I looked up at him through my messy hair. He thought he had broken me. He thought I would sign because I was scared. But as I lay there, humiliated and bleeding, I realized something. I wasn't going to sign. He had made a mistake. This wasn't the end. My war was just beginning. But before I tell you how everything flipped, like and subscribe, drop a comment. Where are you watching from? My name is Olivia Underwood. I am 32 years old, and I live in my late father's Victorian house in the suburbs. To understand why I was lying on that floor with a bloody mouth, you have to go back 3 days. You have to understand that I was already broken before Will ever raised his hand. It started with the funeral. My father, Thomas Underwood, was a good man. He was the kind of man who shook your hand and looked you in the eye. He built his construction company from nothing but a pickup truck and a toolbox. He smelled like sawdust and peppermint. He was my rock. When he died of a sudden heart attack, my world stopped spinning. The funeral was held on a Tuesday. It was raining. It felt like the sky was crying right along with me, but I didn't have any tears left. I just felt numb. I stood by the graveside, wearing a black dress that felt too tight around my stomach. I was 14 weeks pregnant. My husband, well, my ex-husband now, had left months ago. We wanted different things. I wanted a family, he wanted freedom. When I found out I was pregnant after he left, I decided to do it alone. Dad was so happy. He told me, "Liv, that baby is going to be the heir to the Underwood empire. We'll raise him right." Dad never got to meet his grandchild. At the funeral, I stood next to Veronica, my stepmother. She had been married to Dad for 5 years. She was a beautiful woman, in a sharp, cold way. She wore a black veil and a designer dress that probably cost more than my car. She was sobbing loudly, dabbing at dry eyes with a silk handkerchief. "Oh, Thomas," she wailed, leaning against the casket. "Don't leave me." It felt like a performance. I looked at her hands. They weren't shaking. She was gripping her purse tightly, like she was afraid someone would snatch it. My stepbrother, Will, stood on her other side. Will was Veronica's son from her second marriage. He was 35, 3 years older than me. He wore a suit that was too shiny. He kept checking his watch. He looked bored. Every few minutes, he would pull out his phone and type a quick message, shielding the screen with his hand. I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to tell them to show some respect, but I couldn't. I felt a sharp cramp in my lower belly. I gasped and put a hand on my stomach. "You okay, Olivia?" Will asked. He didn't sound concerned. He sounded annoyed. "I'm fine," I whispered. "Just a cramp." But it wasn't just a cramp. It was a twisting, sharp pain that took my breath away. I tried to focus on the priest's words, dust to dust, but the pain got worse. It came in waves. By the time we got into the limousine to go to the wake, I was sweating. I felt dizzy. "Can we stop?" I asked the driver. "I feel sick." Veronica rolled her eyes. "Really, Olivia, today isn't about you. Pull it together." "I think something is wrong," I said. My voice was trembling, then I felt the wetness. I looked down at the car seat. There was blood. Panic seized my chest. "Stop the car," I screamed. "Take me to the hospital." Now, Will looked at the blood and wrinkled his nose. "Jesus, Olivia, that's disgusting." They dropped me at the emergency room entrance. They didn't come in. Veronica said they had to get to the wake to host the guests. They left me there, standing on the curb in the rain, clutching my stomach. The next 6 hours were a blur of white lights and cold instruments. The doctors were kind, but their faces were serious. They did an ultrasound. The room was silent. There was no heartbeat. I lost the baby. They had to perform a procedure called a D&C to clear everything out. It was an emergency. I lay on the hospital bed, staring at the ceiling tiles, counting the little dots. 1, 2, 3. I had lost my father on Friday. I lost my baby on Tuesday. I felt hollowed out. Like someone had reached inside me and scooped out everything that made me human. I was just a shell, a grieving, empty shell. I stayed in the hospital overnight. No one came to visit. I called my phone, but the battery was dead. I borrowed a charger from a nurse and checked my messages. Nothing from Veronica, nothing from Will. Just a generic text from Dad's lawyer, Gary, offering condolences for the funeral. I took a taxi home the next day. I didn't go to my apartment. I couldn't bear to be alone there. I went to Dad's house. It was a big, old Victorian house on the hill. It was the only place that still felt like him. I had a key. I let myself in. The house was quiet. The wake was over. The guests were gone. I walked into the kitchen. There were leftover platters of sandwiches on the counter, beginning to curl at the edges. Empty wine bottles were lined up near the trash. Veronica and Will were nowhere to be seen. I walked slowly up the stairs to my old bedroom. I was sore. The stitches from the procedure pulled every time I moved. My heart felt heavy, like a stone in my chest. I lay down on my old twin bed. It still smelled like lavender detergent, just like when I was a kid. I pulled the quilt up to my chin and closed my eyes. I just wanted to sleep. I wanted to sleep for a year. I drifted off into a restless sleep, dreaming of Dad's laugh and a baby's cry. I woke up to the sound of a diesel engine. It was loud, rumbling right outside my window. I blinked, confused. The clock on the bedside table said 10 a.m. I had slept for 14 hours. I sat up, wincing at the pain in my abdomen. I walked to the window and looked out. There was a massive moving truck parked in the driveway. 2 men in blue jumpsuits were carrying my father's favorite leather armchair out of the front door. "Hey!" I shouted, banging on the glass. "Stop, what are you doing?" I grabbed my robe and ran downstairs. I almost tripped twice. My legs felt weak. I burst out the front door, barefoot on the cold porch. "Stop!" I yelled at the movers. "Put that down, that's my father's chair." The movers stopped and looked at each other. One of them shrugged. "We have a work order, lady," the taller one said. "What work order? Who hired you?" "We did." I spun around. Veronica and Will were standing near the garage. Veronica was wearing a tracksuit and holding a clipboard. Will was leaning against his sports car, drinking a latte. "Veronica," I said, my voice shaking. "What is going on? Why are you moving Dad's things?" Veronica looked up from her clipboard. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, you're awake. Good, we need you to move your car. The truck needs more room to turn around." "My car?" I stared at her. "I just got back from the hospital. I lost the baby, Veronica. My father just died." "What are you doing?" "We're clearing out the house," Will said. He took a sip of his coffee. "It's sold." "Sold?" I felt like I had been punched. "What do you mean sold? Dad's only been dead for 5 days. You can't sell the house, it's our home." "It was Thomas's house," Veronica corrected me. She walked over, her heels clicking on the pavement. She pulled a folded document out of her purse. "And now, it's mine, to do with as I please." She handed me the paper. I took it. My hands were trembling so bad the paper rattled. It was a will, last will and testament of Thomas Underwood. I scanned the pages. My eyes blurred. I saw legal jargon, dates, and signatures. Then I saw the paragraph that mattered. "I, Thomas Underwood, being of sound mind, hereby leave my entire estate, including all real estate, bank accounts, and the Underwood Construction Company, to my beloved wife, Veronica Underwood. To my daughter, Olivia, I leave nothing, as she has chosen her own path." "This is a lie," I whispered. I looked up at them. "This is a lie. Dad would never write this," he told me. "He told me just last week that the company was going to be mine. He showed me the papers last year." Veronica laughed. It was a harsh, dry sound. "People change their minds, Olivia. Thomas realized that you weren't cut out for business. You're too emotional. Look at you now, a mess." "I just had surgery," I screamed. Tears hot and angry pricked my eyes. "This isn't real, that signature. It looks shaky." "He was sick," Olivia, Will said, stepping forward. He loomed over me. He was tall, broad-shouldered from hours at the gym, not from hard work like Dad. His hand wasn't steady at the end. "He had a heart attack," I said. "He wasn't sick. He was fine on Friday morning. I had breakfast with him." "Stress," Veronica said dismissively. "He was under a lot of stress. Mostly because of you and your personal drama." She waved her hand at the movers. "Keep going, boys, everything goes." "No," I lunged for the armchair the movers were holding. "You can't take this." Will stepped in front of me. He grabbed my arm, his grip was tight, too tight. "Don't make a scene, Olivia," he hissed. "You're embarrassing yourself." "Let go of me," I said. I tried to pull away, but I was weak. The pain in my stomach flared up again. I doubled over. "You need to leave," Will said. He shoved me backward. I stumbled and caught myself on the porch railing. "I'm not leaving," I said, gasping for air. "This is my house, I have a room here." "Not anymore," Veronica said. She checked a box on her clipboard. "We're changing the locks today. You can take whatever personal trash you have in your car, but the furniture stays. It's part of the estate auction." "Auction?" I stared at her. "You're selling everything. His tools, his books, Mom's jewelry." "It's all assets," Veronica said. "Cash is liquid, old junk is not." "My mother's jewelry," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. "Dad kept it for me. In the safe, the pearl necklace. The sapphire ring." Veronica smirked. "I didn't see any specific mention of jewelry in the will, Olivia. Everything belongs to me, and frankly, that old stuff was out of style decades ago." She turned back to the movers. "Be careful with the grandfather clock, that's worth $3,000. I stood there, shivering in the cold morning air. I was bleeding, I was grieving, and I was being erased. "I'm going to fight this," I said. I tried to make my voice sound strong, but it came out thin and weak. "I'm going to get a lawyer, I know Dad didn't write this." Will laughed. He walked up to me, close enough that I could smell his expensive cologne. "With what money, Liv? You have your teacher's salary, you think you can go up against the estate lawyers. We have the paperwork, we have the money, you have nothing." He poked me in the chest. "Go home, Olivia. Go back to your little apartment and cry about your dead baby. Leave the business to the adults." The cruelty of it took my breath away. He used my grief as a weapon. I looked at him, really looked at him. I saw the greed in his eyes. I saw the arrogance. And for the first time I saw something else. Fear. He was pushing too hard, he was too aggressive. If the will was real, why was he so angry? Why were they moving so fast? Dad wasn't even cold in the ground yet. "I'm not signing anything," I said quietly. "And I'm not leaving until I get my mother's pearls." "Get off the property," Will said. His face darkened. "Or I'll call the cops and have you arrested for trespassing." "Trespassing? It's my father's house. It's Veronica's house," Will spat. "Now get lost." I didn't leave. I sat down on the porch steps. I wrapped my robe around me. "I'm staying right here." They ignored me for an hour. I watched them strip the house. I watched my childhood disappear into the back of a truck. The lamp I read by. The dining table where we ate Thanksgiving dinner. Then, Will came out of the house. He was holding a stack of papers. "Since you're still here," he said, throwing the papers into my lap, "you can make yourself useful, sign these." I looked down, waiver of contest, agreement to vacate. "If you sign this," Will said, "Mother says she'll give you $5,000, out of the goodness of her heart, to help with your medical bills." $5,000, my father's company was worth millions. "No," I said. "Sign it," Will said. "No, Olivia, don't be stupid." "I'm not signing." That was the moment the dynamic changed. That was when the verbal abuse turned into something else. Will grabbed my arm again, pulling me up from the step. "Listen to me, you little brat. You're going to sign this. We are trying to be nice." "Nice," I shouted. "You're stealing everything." I yanked my arm back. I lost my balance and fell onto the gravel driveway. My knees scraped against the rocks. The pain in my stomach was a sharp, hot knife. Will stood over me. For a second, I thought he was going to kick me. "We'll see how stubborn you are," he said. "You have a follow-up appointment with your doctor tomorrow, right? Dr. Evans?" I looked up, startled. "How do you know that?" "I know everything, Olivia. I know your schedule. I know your bank balance. I know you're broke." He smiled. "We'll be there, bring a pen." He turned and walked back into the house. I sat in the gravel, dirt and blood on my knees. I realized then that I wasn't just dealing with a greedy stepfamily. I was dealing with predators. I got into my car, I drove away. I didn't go to my apartment. I went to a cheap motel on the edge of town. I didn't want them to find me. I needed to think. That night, alone in the motel room, I cried until I couldn't breathe. I mourned my father. I mourned my baby. I mourned the life I thought I had. But as the sun came up the next morning, the tears stopped. A cold, hard knot formed in my stomach. They wanted a fight. They were going to get one. But I made a mistake. I thought I could fight them with words. I thought I could reason with them. I didn't know how far they were willing to go. I went to my doctor's appointment the next day. I needed the checkup. I needed to make sure I was healing physically. I was sitting in the waiting room, reading a magazine about parenting that I should have put down when the door opened. Will walked in. He wasn't smiling anymore. He looked furious. He marched straight toward me, and that brings us to the floor, to the blood in my mouth, to the moment everything changed. The slap echoed. It was a sharp, cracking sound, like a dry branch snapping. For a second, the entire world narrowed down to the stinging burn on my left cheek. My head whipped to the side. I lost my balance on the slick waiting room chair and slid off, hitting the floor hard. My hips slammed against the tiles. I tasted the copper tang of blood. He had cut the inside of my lip against my teeth. I looked up. Will was towering over me. His face was red, veins bulging in his neck. He looked like a stranger. This wasn't the annoying stepbrother I had ignored at family holidays. This was a violent man. "You better start listening to me," he screamed. I stared at him, stunned. He had actually hit me, in public, in a doctor's office. "You think you can hide?" he shouted, pointing a finger at my face. "You think you can dodge us? Sign the damn papers, Olivia." The shock began to fade, replaced by a low, trembling rage. I wiped my mouth with the back of my hand. It came away red. "Call the police," I yelled. My voice sounded raw. "Someone call the police." The receptionist was already on the phone, her eyes wide with terror. "Sir, you need to step back. I'm calling 911 right now." Will looked around, seeming to realize where he was for the first time. He saw the pregnant woman in the corner clutching her husband's arm. He saw the elderly woman staring at him with her mouth open. He sneered at me. "This isn't over." He turned to leave, but a security guard from the main lobby blocked the doorway. The guard was a big man, older, with a gray mustache. "Don't move, son," the guard said calmly. Will huffed. "She's my sister. It's a family dispute. She's hysterical. She just had a miscarriage. She's not in her right mind." "He hit me," I said, struggling to stand up. A nurse ran over to help me. "He assaulted me," Will crossed his arms. "I barely touched her. She fell. She's weak." The police arrived 5 minutes later. 2 officers, they took statements. They looked at my swollen lip. They looked at the red handprint blooming on my cheek. They put Will in handcuffs. Watching him get marched out of the office, his hands behind his back, gave me a surge of satisfaction. But it was short-lived. I gave my statement. I told them about the will, the harassment, the threat. The officer, a young man named Deputy Miller, nodded sympathetically. "We'll charge him with simple assault," Miller said. "He'll be processed downtown." "He's dangerous," I said. "He needs to be kept in jail." "It's a misdemeanor, ma'am. Unless he has priors, he'll likely make bail quickly." I went back to the motel to clean up. My face was throbbing. I looked in the mirror. My lip was split. My cheek was purple and blue. I looked like a victim. I hated it. I decided I couldn't stay at the motel. It wasn't safe. I needed to go home, not to Dad's house that was gone, but to my apartment. I needed my own things. I needed to regroup. I drove to my apartment complex. It was a nice place, a second-floor unit with a balcony. I had lived there for 3 years. I walked up the stairs, digging for my keys. I was exhausted. I just wanted to ice my face and sleep. I put the key in the lock. It wouldn't turn. I frowned. I jiggled it. Nothing. It felt like the wrong key. I stepped back and checked the number. 2 billion. This was my apartment. I tried again. Still nothing. Then I saw the piece of paper taped to the door, right at eye level. Eviction notice. I stared at it. Non-payment of rent. Lease violation. "What?" I whispered. "I paid my rent. I have autopay." I tried the door handle. Locked. I heard a sound from the parking lot below, a distinct, mocking honk. I looked over the railing. Veronica was sitting in her silver Mercedes convertible. She was wearing sunglasses. She waved. I ran down the stairs. "What did you do?" I screamed. "What did you do to my apartment?" Veronica lowered her sunglasses. "Oh, hello, Olivia. Rough day. Your face looks terrible. Why are my locks changed?" "Well," Veronica said, checking her nails. "Did you know that the building owner is a very good friend of mine? We play bridge together. I told him about your financial troubles and the drug use." "Drug use. I don't use drugs. And the noise complaints," she continued smoothly. "He decided it was best to terminate your lease immediately, for the safety of the other tenants." "That's illegal," I shouted. "You can't just kick me out without notice. There are laws. Sue us," she said simply. "Add it to the pile. Oh, by the way, Will is out. He says hello." My blood ran cold. "He's out already." It was a minor misunderstanding. "We paid the bail. He's very upset with you, Olivia. Pressing charges against family, tacky." "Where are my things?" I asked. "My clothes, my furniture." She pointed a manicured finger toward the back of the complex, near the dumpsters. "We helped you pack." She rolled up the window and drove away. I ran to the back of the building. There in the grass next to the dumpster was my life. My clothes were in garbage bags, some ripped open, spilling shirts and jeans onto the muddy ground. My books were thrown in a pile, pages fluttering in the wind. My TV was cracked, face down in the dirt. I fell to my knees. I started frantically digging through the pile. I didn't care about the TV. I didn't care about the clothes. "The box," I whispered. "Where is the box?" I was looking for a small wooden jewelry box. It had been my mother's. Dad had given it to me when I moved out. It wasn't the expensive stuff. Veronica had that locked in the safe at the big house, but it held the sentimental things. My mother's locket with her picture, a pair of silver earrings she wore every day, my hospital bracelet from when I was born. I tore open a black trash bag. Kitchen utensils clattered out. I opened another, towels, then I saw it. It was lying near the curb. The wood was splintered. The lid had been smashed in, probably by a boot. I crawled over to it. I opened the broken lid. Empty. I looked around the grass. I saw something glinting in the mud. Pearl beads. They had taken my mother's faux pearl necklace. A necklace that was worth maybe $20, but meant the world to me, and they had snapped it. The white beads were scattered across the dirty grass and the asphalt of the parking lot. I picked one up. It was muddy. I picked up another. They hadn't just evicted me. They hadn't just stolen my inheritance. They were trying to erase me. They wanted to destroy every memory, every comfort, every safe place I had. They wanted me to break. They wanted me to crawl to them and sign the papers just to make it stop. I sat there in the mud, holding the broken pearls, tears streaming down my bruised face. I felt small. I felt helpless. But then I remembered Dad. I remembered him on a job site years ago. A foreman had tried to cut corners using cheap concrete. Dad had fired him on the spot. "Olivia," he had told me, "integrity is expensive, but it's the only thing worth paying for. And when someone tries to cheat you, you don't back down, you dig in." I looked at the pearls in my hand. "You dig in." I stood up. I wiped my face. I put the few pearls I could find into my pocket. I grabbed one bag of clothes. I left the rest. I didn't need the TV. I didn't need the furniture. I needed allies. I couldn't go to my friends. They were all young professionals who wouldn't know how to handle this. I needed someone who knew Dad. Someone who knew the company. Someone who knew where the skeletons were buried. I got in my car. I put the address into my GPS. Margie Simpson. She had been Dad's accountant for 40 years. She retired last year. She was 73 years old, 5 feet tall, and tough as old leather. She was the only person Veronica had never been able to charm. I drove out of the city toward the suburbs. It was getting dark. My face hurt, my heart hurt, but my hands were steady on the wheel. I wasn't going to run anymore. I was going to war. Margie lived in a small, tidy bungalow with a garden full of gnomes. It was a peaceful house, completely at odds with the chaos of my life. I knocked on the door. It was 8 p.m. The porch light flicked on. The door opened a crack held by a chain. One suspicious blue eye peered out. "Who is it?" "Margie." "It's me, Olivia." The door slammed shut, the chain rattled, and then it swung wide open. Margie stood there in a floral housecoat, holding a cup of tea. She looked at my bruised face. She looked at my split lip. Her eyes narrowed. She didn't gasp, she didn't scream. She just stepped back and opened the door wider. "Get in here," she said. Her voice was like gravel. "And tell me which one of them did it." I walked in. The house smelled like cinnamon and old paper. It was warm. For the first time in days, my shoulders dropped. I sat at her kitchen table while she made me a cup of sweet tea and put a bag of frozen peas on my cheek. "It was Will," I said. "At the doctor's office." "That boy has always been garbage," Margie muttered. She slammed a mug onto the table. "And Veronica is the dumpster he crawled out of." I told her everything. The funeral, the miscarriage, the fake will, the eviction. The pearls. Margie listened without interrupting. She sat across from me, her hands wrapped around her own mug. Her knuckles were arthritic, but her eyes were sharp. When I told her about the will leaving everything to Veronica, she snorted. "Bull," she said. "Total bull. They have a document, Margie. It looks real." "I don't care if the Pope signed it," Margie said. "Thomas Underwood would sooner burn his company to the ground than leave it to that woman. He knew what she was. He married her," I pointed out. "He was lonely," Margie said, "and she's good at pretending, but in the last year he was waking up. He called me 2 weeks before he died." I sat up straighter. "He did?" "Yes. He asked me about the accounts. He said money was leaking. He couldn't figure out where. He asked me if I still had my old admin codes for the server." Did you? Margie smiled. It was a wicked little smile. Olivia, I built that accounting system in 1998. I have a backdoor key that God himself couldn't block. She stood up. Come to the den. We went into her small home office. It was cluttered with stacks of paper. She sat down at a desktop computer that looked 10 years old. She cracked her knuckles. Let's see what they've been up to, she typed furiously, the screen filled with spreadsheets and numbers. Okay, she muttered. I'm in the server. Let's look at the withdrawals. We spent the next 4 hours staring at the screen. My headache faded, replaced by adrenaline. Look at this, Margie said, pointing a crooked finger at a line item. Vendor, VW Consulting. $5,000 a month for retainer fees. Who is VW Consulting? I checked the tax ID, Margie said, clicking another window. It's registered to a P.O. box in Nevada. The owner is listed as William V. Pierce, Will, I said. His middle name is Vincent. He's been paying himself a consulting fee for 3 years, Margie said. But look here, 6 months ago the amount jumped. 50,000. Then 100,000 last month. That's embezzlement, I said. That's theft, Margie corrected. And Thomas found it. Look at the date of this email draft. She opened a folder labeled Drafts in my father's email account. To Gary Garrison, attorney subject. Urgent changes date, 2 days before he died. Gary, I need to see you Monday. I found something rotting in the books. I'm writing a new will. I'm cutting them off. I think I'm in danger. I read the words and a chill went down my spine. I think I'm in danger. He knew, I whispered. He knew they were stealing, and he was going to cut them out. And then he had a sudden heart attack 2 days later, Margie said. Her face was grim. You think they killed him. The words felt heavy in my mouth. Murder, it was one thing to be greedy, it was another to be a killer. I think, Margie said, that 3 husbands of Veronica's have died of heart failure. Thomas was number 4. I felt sick. We need to go to the police. With what? Margie asked. An email draft, a spreadsheet. They'll say it's circumstantial. They'll say you're a disgruntled daughter. We need proof. Hard proof? Where do we get it? The safe, Margie said. Thomas had a safe in the house, not the wall safe in the master bedroom that Veronica uses, the real safe. I didn't know he had a real safe. He installed it 5 years ago. Behind the water heater in the basement. He told me the combination in case anything happened. He said, Margie, if I die sudden, you check the box. We have to get back into the house, I said. But they changed the locks, Margie said. I thought about the old Victorian house. I thought about the summers I spent there as a teenager, sneaking out to meet friends. I know a way in, I said. There's a coal chute window in the basement. The latch has been broken since 2005. Dad never fixed it because he thought it was too small for anyone to squeeze through. Margie looked at me. You're not a teenager anymore, Liv. And you just had surgery. I'll fit, I said. I have to. We made a plan. We would go the next night. Margie would drive the getaway car. I would break in. It was crazy. It was dangerous. But looking at the numbers on that screen, seeing how they had robbed my father blind while he was still alive, I felt a cold resolve. I wasn't just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting for justice. I stayed with Margie that night. I slept on her pull-out couch. I felt safer than I had in days, but I still slept with one eye open. Around 3 a.m. I woke up. There was a noise, a scratching sound, like metal on glass. I sat up, my heart hammering against my ribs. The house was dark, scratch, scratch. It was coming from the living room window. I crept off the couch, my bare feet silent on the carpet. I moved toward the window, staying low. I peeked through the blinds. A shadow was moving on the front porch, a tall, dark figure. They were holding something. A can, hiss, the sound of spray paint. Then the figure stopped. They turned and looked right at the window. They couldn't see me in the dark, but I felt their gaze. I froze. The figure turned and ran, disappearing into the night. A car engine roared to life down the street and screeched away. I turned on the porch light and opened the front door. Margie came stumbling out of her bedroom in her nightgown, holding a heavy brass candlestick. What? Who is it? Look, I pointed at the front of her house. Across the white siding in bright red spray paint were the words, "Stop digging or next time we come in." Margie stared at the words. She didn't shake. She didn't cry. Her jaw tightened. Well, she said. That settles it. Settles what? I asked, my voice trembling. Margie, they know I'm here. They know we're looking. This is dangerous. I can't put you in danger. Margie looked at me. She raised the candlestick. Olivia, I'm 73 years old. I've survived cancer, a divorce, and 40 tax seasons. Some punk with a spray can doesn't scare me, it makes me mad. She poked me in the shoulder. They're scared, that's what this means. If they were safe, they'd ignore us, they're panicking. They threatened to come in next time, I said. Let them try, Margie said. I have a shotgun under my bed and I know how to use it. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. We sat in the kitchen drinking coffee, watching the sun come up over the red letters on the wall. At 8 a.m. the doorbell rang, I jumped. Margie grabbed the candlestick again. She looked through the peephole. It's him. Will, open it, she said. She opened the door. Will stood there. He was wearing a fresh suit, looking clean and polished. He held a bouquet of flowers. He looked at the spray paint on the wall and feigned surprise. Oh my God, Margie, what happened here? Vandalism. Cut the crap, Will, Margie said. She didn't step back, she blocked the doorway. I came to see Olivia, Will said, trying to look over her head. I heard she was staying here. I wanted to apologize for the misunderstanding at the doctor's office. Mother and I are worried about her mental state. She's fine, Margie said. She's better than fine. I'd like to speak to her, Will said, taking a step forward. No, I said. I stepped out from behind Margie. Will's eyes landed on me. He smiled. It was a shark's smile. Liv, look at you. You look tired. Come home. We can work this out. We can discuss the settlement. He emphasized the word settlement while his eyes flicked to the spray paint. I'm not coming with you, I said, and I'm not signing. Olivia, Will said, his voice dropping to a low, menacing tone. You're making this hard. You're dragging poor Margie into your mess. You don't want anything to happen to her, do you? Accidents happen. Old ladies fall downstairs. Houses catch fire. Margie laughed. It was a loud, barking sound. Listen here, you cheap suit, Margie said. She stepped onto the porch and poked Will hard in the chest with the candlestick. You threaten me again, and I will audit your life so hard your ancestors will feel it. Now get off my property before I call the cops and show them your artwork. She pointed to the red paint. Will glared at her. His mask slipped. He looked like a petulant child. You're making a mistake, he said. Both of you. He threw the flowers on the ground and stomped back to his car. I watched him go. My hands were shaking, but not from fear anymore. From rage. He's desperate, Margie said. He came here to check if we were scared. He wanted to see if the threat worked. Did it work? I asked. No, Margie said. It just confirmed we're on the right track. She looked at me. Tonight, we go to the house tonight. If he's this worried, there's something in that safe that will bury him. Tonight, I agreed. The fear was still there, sitting in my stomach like a cold stone. I knew Will was capable of violence. I had felt it on my face. I knew Veronica was capable of cruelty. But I also knew that my father had suspected he was being poisoned. I knew he had tried to warn Gary. If I stopped now, they won. If I stopped now, Dad's death meant nothing. My baby's loss meant nothing. I went to the hardware store that afternoon. I bought a flashlight, a pry bar, and a pair of dark coveralls. My war was no longer silent. It was loud, it was red paint on a white house, and tonight it was going to be a break-in. I was ready to take back what was mine. At 2 a.m., the world was pitch black. We parked Margie's sedan 2 streets over from my father's house. The neighborhood was silent. You have 20 minutes, Margie whispered. She checked her watch. If you're not back, I'm driving this car through the front door. I'll be back, I said. I slipped out of the car. I was wearing black coveralls and gloves. My stomach throbbed where the stitches were healing, a dull, constant ache, but the adrenaline numbed the worst of it. I crept through the neighbor's hedge and dropped into the backyard. The house loomed above me, dark and empty. Veronica and Will were staying at a hotel downtown while they renovated. The house felt abandoned. It felt like a tomb. I went to the basement window well. It was covered in dead leaves. I cleared them away and found the old coal chute. It was small, rusted, and dirty. I prayed the latch was still broken. I pushed. It groaned, metal grinding on metal, and then swung inward. I took a breath and slid feet first into the hole. It was a tight squeeze. The rough concrete scraped my back. I hissed in pain as my stomach pressed against the ledge, but I pushed through. I dropped down onto a pile of coal dust in the basement bin. I was in. I clicked on my flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the dusty basement. It smelled of damp earth and my father's sawdust. I moved quickly. I went past the workbenches, past the stacked boxes of holiday decorations to the utility corner. There it was, the old water heater. Dad had told Margie, behind the heater, loose brick. I squeezed behind the tank. It was hot and cramped. I ran my gloved hands over the brick wall. One brick felt loose. I wiggled it. It slid out. Behind it was a small, gray metal safe embedded in the foundation. I pulled out the slip of paper Margie had given me. 4:15:88, my birthday. I turned the dial, right to 4, left to 15, right to 88, click, the handle turned, the door swung open. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I reached inside. There was a thick manila envelope and a small orange pill bottle. I grabbed them and sat down on the dirty floor to look. I opened the envelope first. Last will and testament of Thomas Underwood. Dated 3 days before his death. Notarized by a frantic scrawl I didn't recognize, but it had a seal. I scanned it. I, Thomas Underwood, hereby revoke all former wills. I leave 100% of the Underwood Construction Company and all assets to my daughter, Olivia Underwood. My wife, Veronica, is to receive nothing. Tears filled my eyes. He had done it. He had tried to protect me. I dug deeper into the envelope. There was a handwritten letter on yellow legal pad paper. Livy, if you are reading this, I made a mistake. I waited too long. I think Veronica is poisoning me. My coffee tastes bitter every morning. My heart races when I sit still. I found the transfers will made. They are bleeding the company dry. I'm going to Gary on Monday. If I don't make it, check the pills. I love you, kiddo. Stay strong, Dad. I put a hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. He knew. He was scared and he was alone and he knew. I picked up the pill bottle. The label said heart medication digoxin, but inside the pills looked different. They were slightly different shades of white. Some looked chalky. I put everything into my zipped pocket. I had the proof. I climbed back up on the coal bin. Getting out was harder than getting in. I had to pull myself up, straining my arms, scraping my stomach again. I gritted my teeth against the pain. For Dad, I thought. For the baby. I tumbled out onto the grass, gasping for air. I ran back to the car. Margie unlocked the door as I approached. Got it? She asked. I held up the envelope. I got it. Let's go, she said. She gunned the engine. As we drove away, I looked back at the house one last time. It wasn't a home anymore. It was a crime scene. The next morning, we walked into the office of Gary Garrison, my father's attorney. Gary was a tall, nervous man who always looked like he was expecting bad news. When he saw my face, still bruised and swollen, he winced. Olivia, he said, I heard about the altercation with Will. I'm so sorry. Forget my face, Gary, I said. I threw the envelope on his mahogany desk. Read this? He opened the envelope. He read the will. He read the letter. His face went pale. He took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. Thomas called me, Gary whispered. He left a voicemail on Sunday night. He said he needed to update his file. I didn't call him back until Monday morning. By then, he was gone. They killed him, Gary, I said. My voice was steady. And we're going to prove it. Gary looked at the pill bottle. This is serious. This is capital murder territory. We need the police. Real police, not the patrol guys. He made a call. An hour later, Detective Riley walked in. Riley was a woman in her 40s with tired eyes and a sharp suit. She didn't look like she tolerated nonsense. She listened to my story. She looked at the will. She read the letter. When she saw the letter, her demeanor changed. She stopped taking notes and looked at me intensely. You're telling me Veronica Underwood has been married before? Riley asked. 3 times, Margie piped up from the corner. I looked it up last night. Husband 1, heart attack. Husband 2, stroke. Husband 3, heart failure. Riley's eyes narrowed. And now Thomas, heart attack. She picked up the pill bottle with a gloved hand. I'm taking this to the lab immediately. If these pills are tampered with, we have cause for an exhumation. Exhumation? I shuddered. The thought of them digging up Dad. To prove poison, Riley said gently. It's the only way to be sure. We waited 3 days for the lab results. Those 3 days were agony. I stayed at Margie's, sleeping in shifts. Will called my phone 10 times a day. I didn't answer. On Thursday, Riley called us back to the station. She put a report on the table. Digitalis, she said. Foxglove, it mimics a heart attack if you overdose. The pills in that bottle. They weren't his heart medication. They were crushed digitalis pressed into similar shapes, a lethal dose. She poisoned him, I said. The room felt cold. She fed him poison every morning with his coffee. We also found something else, Riley said. She pulled out a file. We got a warrant for Veronica's phone records based on the letter. She's been tracking you, Olivia. Tracking me. She installed a spyware app on your phone months ago, probably when you visited for Sunday dinner. She knows your location. She reads your texts. That's how we'll knew about your doctor's appointment. That's how they knew when you were at the funeral home. I felt violated. I reached into my pocket and turned off my phone. So arrest them, Margie said, slamming her hand on the table. Go get them. Riley shook her head. We need to tie them to the act. We know the pills killed him, but we need to prove they put them there. We need a confession, or we need them to implicate themselves. She looked at me. Olivia, are you willing to do something dangerous? What? I asked. We need you to wear a wire, Riley said. We need you to meet them. We need you to tell them you're ready to sign the papers. We need you to play the victim one last time. I touched my bruised cheek. I thought about Dad drinking his bitter coffee. I'll do it, I said. The setup was scheduled for Friday afternoon, 1 week after the funeral. I turned my phone back on. I sent a text to Will. I can't do this anymore. You win. I'm broken. I'm tired. I'll sign the papers. Just give me the money. He replied in 30 seconds. Smart girl, Dad's office. 2 p.m. Don't be late. I went to the police station at noon. A female officer taped a small microphone to my chest, right under my bra strap. The wire ran down my side to a tiny transmitter taped to my lower back. It's sensitive, Riley told me. You don't need to shout, just get them talking. Get them to admit the will is fake. Get them to mention the pills if you can. What if they search me? I asked. If they touch you, Riley said, we come in. We'll be in the van outside. We'll have eyes on the building. You say the code phrase if you're in trouble. What's the code phrase? I wish Dad were here. I nodded. I wish Dad were here. I drove to the construction company headquarters. It was a modern glass building Dad was so proud of. I parked in my usual spot. I walked into the lobby. The receptionist, a sweet girl named Sarah who had known me for years, looked at me with pity. I'm so sorry about your dad, Olivia, she whispered. Thanks, Sarah, I said. Is Will upstairs? They're in the main conference room. I took the elevator up. My hands were shaking. I put them in my pockets to hide it. I had to look broken. I had to look defeated. I walked down the hallway. The photos of Dad on the walls seemed to watch me. Integrity is expensive, he had said. Today I was paying the price. I pushed open the heavy glass doors of the conference room. Will was sitting at the head of the table, Dad's chair. He had his feet up on the mahogany surface. Veronica was standing by the window, looking out at the city skyline. Well, Will said, smirking. Look who finally crawled out of her hole. I'm here, I said, keeping my voice low. I slumped my shoulders. Just give me the papers. Have a seat, sweetie, Veronica said. She didn't turn around. We have a lot to sign. I sat down. On the table was a stack of documents. Transfer of assets, waiver of rights, non-disclosure agreement. This says I can't talk about the company, I said, reading the NDA. Standard, Will said. We don't want you bad-mouthing the new management. We're selling the company, Olivia. Liquidating. We have a buyer in China. You're selling it? I asked, letting shock bleed into my voice. But Dad built this, the employees. The pension fund. The employees are being let go, Will said casually. The pension fund is, well, let's just say it's part of the package. We're cashing out. By Monday, we'll be on a beach in Mallorca. You can't do that, I said. It's stealing. It's business, Will said. He slid a pen across the table. Sign. What about the will? I asked. The one you showed me, it was fake, wasn't it? Dad didn't sign that. Will laughed. He looked at Veronica. She's still on that. Veronica turned around. Her face was cold. Does it matter, Olivia? Thomas is dead. The result is the same. He suspected you, I said softly. He told me he thought he was being poisoned. The room went dead silent. Will took his feet off the table. He leaned forward. What did you say? He wrote me a letter, I lied. He said the coffee tasted bitter. Veronica walked over to the table. She placed her hands on the wood and leaned in close to my face. You have a vivid imagination, Olivia, just like your mother, and look where she ended up, dead and forgotten. Did you kill him? I asked. Did you switch his pills? Veronica smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I had ever seen. Thomas was a weak old man, she whispered. He had outlived his usefulness, and he was going to cut us off. We did what we had to do, just like we're doing with you. So you admit it, I said. I admit nothing, Veronica said, straightening up. But who would believe you, the grieving, hysterical daughter who just lost a baby? You're pathetic. Sign the papers, Olivia, Will growled. Or maybe you'll have another accident like at the doctor's office. Maybe this time you won't wake up. I looked at the pen. I looked at Will. I looked at Veronica. I had it. I had the threat. I had the admission of motive. I sat up straight. I stopped slumping. I looked Will directly in the eyes. I'm not signing, I said. My voice was clear and strong. What? Will stood up. I said I'm not signing. And I'm not alone. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the orange pill bottle. I set it on the table. I found the safe, Will, I found the real Will, and I found the digitalis. Will's face went white. Veronica gasped. You little bitch, Will roared. He lunged across the table. He grabbed my throat. His hands were huge and hot. He squeezed. I wish Dad were here, I screamed, choking. The glass doors exploded inward. Federal agents, drop it. Get on the ground. Men in body armor poured into the room. Rifles were raised. Will froze. His hands were still around my neck. Let her go now, Riley screamed, aiming her weapon at Will's head. Will let go. He stumbled back, holding his hands up. She attacked me, she's crazy. I fell back into the chair, coughing, gasping for air. 2 agents tackled Will to the ground. He hit the floor hard. Get off me. Do you know who I am? Veronica tried to run. She bolted for the side door. Don't move, Riley shouted. Veronica stopped. She turned, her face a mask of pure hatred. I want my lawyer, this is a setup. That girl planted evidence. Riley walked up to Veronica and slapped the handcuffs on her wrists. Veronica Underwood, you are under arrest for the murder of Thomas Underwood, conspiracy to commit murder and fraud. You have the right to remain silent. Murder, Veronica shrieked. You have no proof. We have the pills, Riley said calmly. We have the forged will. We have the wire recording of you admitting he was going to cut you off. And we have the exhumation order. Veronica went silent. The fight drained out of her. She slumped. I stood up. My neck hurt. My face hurt. But I felt lighter than air. I walked over to where Will was pinned to the carpet. He was breathing heavy, his face pressed against the floor. You're going to jail, Will, I said. For a long, long time. He looked up at me. His eyes were wet. Liv, please, I didn't know about the poison. It was her. It was all her idea. I just wanted the money. You watched him die, I said. And you slapped me while I was bleeding. You're a coward. They dragged them out. I watched from the window as they were shoved into the back of police cruisers. The lights flashed red and blue against the gray city buildings. Employees were gathering in the hallway, whispering, looking scared. I opened the conference room door. It's okay, I told them. They're gone. The company is safe. Gary Garrison came running down the hall. He looked at me, then at the empty chairs. Did we get them? We got them, I said. I collapsed into a chair. The adrenaline crashed. I started to shake. I put my head in my hands and cried. Not from grief this time, from relief. Margie came in a few minutes later. She walked over and put a hand on my shoulder. You did good, kid, she said. Your dad would be proud. I miss him, Margie, I sobbed. I miss him so much. I know, she said, but you saved his legacy. You saved everything. The trial took a year. It was a circus. The media loved the story. The Black Widow and the evil stepbrother, I testified. I sat on the stand and told the jury everything. I looked Veronica in the eye. She stared back, cold and unrepentant. The evidence was overwhelming. The pills matched the toxicity in Dad's body. The handwriting expert proved the will was a forgery created by Will. The forensic accountant, Margie, walked the jury through every stolen dollar. The verdict came back in 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. Veronica was sentenced to life in prison without parole. Will got 25 years for conspiracy, fraud, and assault. When the gavel banged down, I didn't cheer. I just closed my eyes and let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 12 months. It was over. I took over the company. It wasn't easy. Will had done a lot of damage. But with Margie coming out of retirement to help me manage the books, and Gary handling the legal side, we rebuilt. We rehired the people Will had fired. We restored the pension fund. I moved back into Dad's house. I renovated it. I painted over the gray walls with warm colors. I turned the basement, where I had crawled through the coal chute, into a wine cellar, but I kept the safe as a reminder. One afternoon, about 2 years later, I was at the grocery store. I reached for a box of cereal and bumped hands with a man. Oh, excuse me, he said. He had kind eyes and a gentle smile. I recognized him. Dr. Brooks, he looked surprised. Olivia. From the ER, he was the doctor who had treated me the night I lost the baby, the one who had been kind when my family left me. Nathan, he said, please call me Nathan. We went for coffee, then dinner. He was quiet, steady, and honest. He didn't care about my money or my company. He cared about me. We got married in the garden of Dad's house. Margie was my maid of honor. She wore a bright pink dress and smoked a cigar at the reception. And then the miracle happened. I was 35. We had been trying for a while. When I saw the two pink lines on the stick, I burst into tears. I was terrified. But this time it was different. This time I had a partner. I had peace. 9 months later, I gave birth to a healthy baby boy. We named him Thomas. A week after the birth, I drove to the cemetery. It was a crisp autumn day. The leaves were turning gold and red. I walked to Dad's grave. The headstone was simple granite. Thomas Underwood, beloved father, builder. I stood there with my son in my arms. He was sleeping, wrapped in a blue blanket. "Hi, Dad," I whispered. The wind rustled the trees. It sounded like a sigh. "I brought someone to meet you," I said. I touched the baby's cheek. "This is Tommy." I looked at the grave. I thought about the war I had fought. I thought about the blood on the floor, the broken pearls, the fear. It had changed me. I wasn't the same girl who had stood there at the funeral, weak and victimized. I was stronger now. I was a survivor. "I did it, Dad," I said. "I saved the company, I put them away, and I'm happy." I laid a single white rose on the stone. "Rest now," I said. "I've got it from here." I turned and walked back to the car where Nathan was waiting for me. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. My war was over. My life had just begun.